Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Today's presentation is Introduction to Business Insurance. This is critical information for all small business owners. And this webinar is presented by the SCORE, Hudson Valley, and Greater New York chapters. And we have them listed there: Dutchess, Long Island, Orange, Putnam, Queens, Rockland, Staten Island, Ulster, and Westchester. Next. About SCORE, our goal is to foster vibrant small businesses through free mentoring and education. We serve our small business communities by providing confidential business mentoring, webinars and workshops, extensive online educational resources, and we service from startups to established businesses. We have volunteer mentors with wide-ranging industry experiences and areas of expertise to draw upon. And there are 10,000 volunteers on a national basis. Next chart, please. Here's a list of all the sponsoring chapters and how you can contact them if you have questions requesting a mentor. Here's the information to get you to the right source. Next chart. Couple of housekeeping notes. Everyone will be muted during the presentation. As we go, please submit your questions and comments into the Q&A box. The chat box will be disabled. We look forward to answering as many questions as possible at the end of the webinar. So we will leave time to be able to do that. Also, you will receive a copy of the recording and slides from this presentation. Next chart, please. Today's webinar. There are many different types of insurance that your business likely needs. Do you know the most common types of business insurance? Are you sure that your coverage is right for you? This webinar will arm yourself with the right questions to have a discussion with your insurance broker. In this webinar, you will learn the top 8 types of business insurance, gain knowledge of each type of insurance and its purpose, understand the value of each type of coverage. In addition to the presentation and the recording, you'll get a free copy of Hudson Valley Credit Unit's Business Insurance ebook for your future reference. Next slide. Today's presenter is Tina Ludwig. She's been part of the banking, finance, and insurance industries for more than 24 years. Her responsibilities have included relationship management, marketing, sales, and business development. As the Assistant Vice President of Insurance Services at Hudson Valley Credit Union, she leads the strategy and delivery of property and casualty insurance products to Hudson Valley Credit Union, more than 330,000 personal and business members, providing access to comprehensive and cost-effective insurance solutions. Tina has been honored for her community service, mentoring, and leadership. In 2008, she was presented with the Leadership Dutchess Community Advocate Award, as well as Volunteer of the Year with Rebuilding Together Dutchess County. The Dutchess County Chamber of Commerce named her as a 40 under 40 honoree in 2010 and an Athena honoree in 2018, 2 prestigious recognitions here in Dutchess County. An alumni of Dutchess Community College, Tina completed her bachelor's degree in organizational management from Ashford University in the fall of 2018. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Tina.
Thanks, Bill. Very excited to be here, and Hudson Valley Credit Union is excited to partner with SCORE to deliver this presentation and to talk about something I'm very passionate about, which is business insurance. As Bill mentioned, we're going to talk about the 8 types of insurance your business needs. Before we get started, just one housekeeping item on my side, our standard disclosure, which appears on the screen, and it will also be contained in the copy of today's presentation that Bill submits to you. Finding the right insurance coverage is important. Before we kick off today, I'd like to take a very quick poll from the audience. When is the last time you reviewed your business insurance? We're going to give just another few seconds to allow people to enter their response. Okay, the results are in. 51% of our participants today said within 0 to 6 months, 20% 7 to 12 months, 12% 13 to 18 months ago, and just about 17% more than a year and a half ago. We're going to talk a little bit more as we get deeper into the conversation about the importance of reviewing your insurance regularly, at least annually, with a licensed insurance broker. Today's objective is to create a stronger awareness of the risks associated with not having the right insurance program, and also the value of working with an insurance professional that can help you create an insurance strategy that keeps pace with the growing needs of your business. As I mentioned during our poll, there was a variety of different vantage points from our audience of when they last reviewed their insurance. We're going to talk specifically about making that more of a regular habit and not missing the opportunity to talk to an insurance professional about the changing needs of your business. First, I'd like to address some common misconceptions. So, first and foremost, insurance is costly. It's hard to understand. Coverage is unavailable or inadequate. Each of these concerns are valid and easy to overcome by having a meaningful discussion with a licensed insurance professional that can help you not only understand the coverage you have, make sure you have the right coverage and close any gaps that might be present, and build out a strategy that fits your budget. So let's dive in and cover one of the most common questions business owners have. Is business insurance a legal requirement? The answer is both yes and no. While some coverages are carried by business owners simply because they're prudent and they want to be well protected against a potential financial loss, there are certain coverages required by many states, including New York. For example, when you have employees, workers' compensation and disability insurance is required to comply with state laws. General liability and property insurance may be required by contract. So whether you're a contractor or a provider of professional services and you're being asked to submit proof of insurance or potentially obtaining a loan at your financial institution, and in order to fund that loan, you have to provide proof that you have the appropriate coverage in place. It's important to remember that business insurance is customizable. It is not a one size fits all program. Although there are policies out there like the business owner's policy, often referred to as a BOP, that marries together many different coverages, those policies are customized to the industry in which you do business. So if you work in the retail space, the coverages that are brought together under that one policy are going to be specific to that industry. It would look very different if you were an architect. Again, it's important to talk with your insurance broker about what's the best fit for your business. General liability is the first coverage that I'd like to take you through and break down to give you a little bit more detail. It's one of the most common types of business insurance that a business needs. It provides protection in the event there is a claim alleging bodily injury or property damage. So for example, take a look at the image on the screen. This gentleman happens to work in a space where he's storing lots of different types of physical assets. Likely he has a vendor or a supplier who's making routine deliveries. If the delivery person comes to that retail shop or to this warehouse, slips and falls, this will likely trigger a liability claim for the business. So you might ask, what are the typical policy limits that you'll see for general liability? General liability is typically written in increments of $1 million, although there are instances where you can purchase less, but more often it's 1 million per occurrence and 2 million per aggregate. The aggregate is the most a policy will pay in any given policy year. Commercial property insurance helps protect your owned or rented building, plus any tools, equipment, or physical assets owned by the business. You may have heard this referred to as commercial property or commercial building insurance or business personal property coverage. The most common causes of loss covered by this form of insurance would be fire, theft, burglary, wind, and lightning. Up next is commercial auto insurance. A commercial auto policy provides physical damage coverage for vehicles you own, lease, hire, or use in your business, as well as liability coverage for bodily injury and property damage caused to others by your use of these insured vehicles. So you might ask, what if my company doesn't own or rent any vehicles? You could still have a commercial auto insurance exposure that needs to be considered and addressed in your insurance strategy. Take, for example, if you have employees that frequently or infrequently run errands for your business, whether it's dropping by the post office to pick up a package or heading over to your financial institution to make a deposit, or perhaps even running out to Lowe's to get new supplies for a job site. If your employee is involved in an auto accident while in the course of business, your business is vulnerable to loss. Their personal auto insurance policy would respond primarily, but it would also trigger a claim to the business for the exposure that you have for your employee conducting business. So we would want to make sure you had the ever important hired and non-owned auto coverage. That coverage is built into a commercial auto policy and will provide protection in the event of this form of loss. Next, we're going to address workers' compensation insurance. As I alluded to earlier when we started, there are a certain number of coverages that are mandated by the state, New York State and many, many other states as well. Workers' compensation is one of those. If you have employees in the state of New York, you must carry workers' compensation insurance. This coverage provides cash benefits and medical care for workers who are injured or become ill as a direct result of the work they're doing on their job. It is an employer paid program. What I mean by this, the premiums that you pay for workers' compensation insurance cannot be shared or passed through to your employee. Switching gears just a little bit for disability insurance. Disability insurance is another one of those coverages that's mandated by our state. It's a short-term insurance benefit that pays a portion of the employee's income when he or she is disabled from an illness or an injury and cannot work. The most common claim for disability insurance is for pregnant mothers soon after the delivery of their child. The state does allow cost sharing for this form of insurance up to 60 cents per week. Although it's uncommon, some employers do take advantage of that option and share the cost with their employees. Commercial umbrella coverage is up next. One of the most important and often overlooked coverages a business needs is commercial umbrella coverage. I'm going to back up 1 second. Sorry, Bill. Business interruption is next. I apologize for that. One of the most important and often overlooked coverages a business needs is business interruption coverage. If your business is forced to shut down due to a cover loss, think about a fire as depicted in this picture here today. Your retail space is damaged so significantly that you can't operate business. The fire department comes in and says it's not fit for occupancy. Business interruption insurance can help cover your operating expenses, including revenue that you would normally be generating if your business were open, rent or mortgage expenses that you incur if you have to occupy a new space. If the builder comes in and says it's going to be 6 to 12 months before we can get this location habitable again, and you have to identify a secondary location, business interruption is going to pick up that added expense. So anything that's outside of the normal expenses that you had for your business, including that temporary space and payroll for your employees while they're not working, to name a few. Disasters happen and they're often unexpected. Business interruption insurance will make sure that this disaster that could forsake your business doesn't take you out of business permanently. Next up is commercial umbrella, the slide that I was alluding to before. And this image is very apropos for the next coverage that we're discussing here today. As you see, the man in the picture is not protected by an umbrella. He's left out in the rain. No one wants to be that guy, right? Commercial umbrella coverage is very important. Every business should consider purchasing a commercial umbrella policy because it provides an extra layer of liability protection above and beyond the other policy limits that you may carry. So if you had general liability or commercial auto or even both, it provides that umbrella protection over those limits and triggers a response once those limits are exhausted. Typically, a commercial umbrella policy is written in increments of $1 million, and it's the most cost-effective way to obtain additional liability coverage protection for your business, particularly if it's required by contract that you carry higher levels of liability limits. Errors and omissions coverage is next, and this is more of a specialized form of liability protection. It's often referred to as E&O. Any business that is providing a professional service, such as an architect, a photographer, a lawyer, or even a medical professional, need to carry E&O coverage. It will provide protection for you and your business in the event there is a claim of a negligent act, an error or omission committed during business activities that result in a financial loss. The largest benefit of E&O coverage is the legal protection that you have. So the legal defense coverage, even if you are not wrong. So even if a negligent act was not committed, legal defense will kick in under this policy and provide you legal representation to ward off that claim. So now that we've talked through the common types of business insurance, I want to chat a little bit more about how we balance the need for the right coverage while also being mindful of the expenses associated with purchasing that coverage. Like cogs in a wheel, everything has to work together to make the best fit for your company. If one is off, then the other can't be optimized and work efficiently. We want to make sure business owners aren't sacrificing coverage to save on expense. One way to improve, or a number of ways to improve cash flow and minimize insurance expenses, is to look at these three key areas: a pay as you go feature, increased deductibles, and available discounts. Pay as you go is something that has become commonplace in the workers' compensation market. It allows you to pay the premium for workers' compensation insurance as you're accumulating the risks. So as you're paying your employees, your exposure for that payroll is then calculated, and a premium is promulgated relative to the coverage, and you can make payment based on the frequency of when you pay your employees. It helps mitigate those large premiums due quarterly, semi-annually, or annually. It also helps you avoid large audits at the end of the year. Increased deductibles. So this is a lever you have great control over. It's really your risk tolerance. How much are you willing to have skin in the game before the insurance company opens up the claim and makes a payout? The higher the deductible, the lower the insurance premium. And it works vice versa. The lower the deductible, the higher insurance premium. So it's important to talk to your licensed insurance professional about what your risk tolerance is. And then, of course, not to overlook available discounts. So discounts for features in your property, such as sprinklers, smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, fire and burglar alarms. Also, some auto and commercial auto insurance programs will provide you with a discount if your vehicle drivers, so any of the employees that are driving the company vehicles, have taken defensive driving. There are a variety of different discounts available for commercial insurance policies, and it's important to have that conversation with your broker. The most important thing that you can do and take away from today is getting a comprehensive review of your insurance policies to ensure that you have everything you need to protect your company. I'd like to give you a few case examples of insurance in motion today and to talk to you a little bit about how we've provided protection to some of our clients. One of the examples that I have for you is an auto repair shop. Their business objective when we originally met was to improve cash flow without sacrificing coverage. There's a number of ways that we were able to address this. We were able to look at the owner's risk tolerance and provide cost savings through deductible changes, broaden coverages through available endorsements specific to the business industry, and improve monthly cash flow with an alternative payment strategy. So, what I mean by that alternative pay strategy is you don't you're not locked into paying your premiums monthly, quarterly, or annually. There are other options, the pay as you go feature that I mentioned earlier for the workers' comp program. Make sure you're armed with this information to have a very detailed conversation with your insurance broker to select the strategy that best meets your company needs. You can also look at things like cash flow for seasonality. How do different seasons impact the revenue that your business is generating? Be open and honest with your insurance broker and talk to them about pain points in your insurance plans or the timing of payments that are due so that you can address those. Up next, another case example of insurance in motion is a local bakery. Their objective was, I want my current insurance program to meet my growing needs. Business continues to change and evolve. If we've learned anything from the COVID-19 pandemic, it's that business had to change, did change, and will continue to change. So in this particular case, a bakery was in business less than 2 years. The business owner wanted to ensure their current insurance program was meeting their growing needs. Through a comprehensive review, their broker was able to identify changes that needed to be made to the current policy to close coverage gaps, address the fact that they were acquiring or would be acquiring new assets, assess the owner's risk tolerance, and reduce out-of-pocket expenses relating to a potential claim. So in this case, actually, we lowered the deductible, and educate the business member on how to prepare and budget for their expansion and include insurance in that calculation. It's very important that insurance maintains a line in your budget. As you continue to grow, your needs for insurance will change as well, and they will likely increase. So it's important to make sure you're budgeting for those changes. As Bill alluded to earlier today, when we kicked off this session, we're going to be delivering an ebook that will deliver the content of this webinar in a nice format. It will cover all of the topics that we talked about today and take a deeper dive into the discussion that I had with you. Bill? Bill, I think you're muted.
Helps if I unmute. Tina, thank you very much. Very informative information regarding all the different elements of the insurance industry and the types of coverage a typical business owner ought to consider. We do have several questions, so I'm going to serve them up for you right now. First one is, I am an RN certified care manager and own a care management company. I only have a few employees for office work who mostly work remotely from their home. I do not employ any home health aides but do at times refer certain aides who the family or client may or may not hire. I do transport clients to and from medical appointments and or errands. Now, those are more statements. I'm assuming the question is, what should she be considering for coverages?
Sure, sure, Bill. That's a very complex situation. So,
Yep.
just based on what you read, there's a professional liability exposure for the work that she's doing as an RN in the health industry, the guidance that she's providing. There's also a commercial auto exposure if you're transporting your clientele to and from, appointments. And if your employees are also partaking in that, it doesn't sound like they were, because it sounded like they were mostly office clerical. We'd have to do a deeper dive offline, so I would like this individual to take my contact information. The office and clerical staff would also need workers' compensation insurance, but those are the first things that come to mind in the scenario that you just provided.
Great. Thank you. I am a marketing consultant. I may be required to get a $1 million commercial and/or professional liability policy for a specific client. As this is considered small, insurance brokers don't want to talk to me about it. They point me to online policies where it is difficult to get any real advice. Do you have any suggestions?
Yes. Leverage my contact information and we can chat. I can certainly point you in the right direction. As a small business owner, there are policies available to you, and they should be easy to obtain. They'll also include the coverage that we talked about earlier, that professional E&O, errors and omission coverage, which you need as a marketer.
And just for reference, Tina has mentioned this, you can contact her directly. Included in the slide deck is a copy of her contact information. There it is. Okay. Going on to the next question. I also run Age Well Family Solutions LLC from my own home. Do I need a rider on my homeowner's insurance, or do I need to obtain a whole separate coverage?
It really depends on what the business operations entail. Most homeowners insurance carriers will provide you with the option of adding a home business endorsement for incidental operations, but there's very limited industries that they want to cover under that endorsement. So it's best to speak to your insurance broker about whether the right option is to endorse the home policy or purchase a small business owner's policy.
How is error and omissions different than professional liability insurance?
So they're synonymous, they're one and the same.
What is a terrorism insurance and what is its purpose?
So terrorism insurance was birthed after the events of 9/11. It is an endorsement feature that can be added to most policies and provides additional protections in the event of a terrorist act.
For a e-com retailer, do they need product liability insurance?
I'm sorry, Bill, I didn't hear the question.
For a e-com retailer, do they need product liability insurance?
Again, this is going to depend greatly on what type of e-com business they're running. If they're manufacturing their own products, they may need products and completed operations. Otherwise, for e-commerce, general liability may satisfy their need for their exposure.
Is workers' comp required for 1099 employees?
So that is a very tricky question, and
Yep.
I'm going to ask you to redirect them to talk with me offline. There are some rules at the state level that says, 1099 employees could be considered your employees if they're regularly in the pursuit of the same business. So that's a very complex situation. You may need to talk with some legal counsel about, but certainly you could address more offline with me.
I am a legal document agent and notary. I use my personal car. What insurance do you suggest?
Does this person have any description on whether they've established their own business or they're working as an individual?
That's what I just read is,
All right. Sorry, read it again, Bill.
I am a legal document agent and notary. I use my personal car when insurance. What insurance do you suggest? I
I'm
would-
going to make the assumption that they're working for an entity in this capacity. So you want to make sure your personal insurance has been reviewed and that you have adequate insurance limits. And then you also want to talk with whomever you're working with or on behalf of to ensure they have that hired and non-owned commercial auto coverage to make sure that coverage is, that exposure is covered.
Is business credit and a factor impacting insurance premiums?
So we do look at an insurance score that's promulgated by insurance carriers. It's not so much the credits because we're not extending you any credit, but they do look at the financial stability of the organization in order to determine whether or not it's a viable risk for the carrier.
I am starting a consulting business. I expect to be the only employee and work out of my home. What insurance do I need? Errors and omissions, other?
Yes, definitely you'll need errors and omission coverage. You'll also want to make sure that you have reviewed your homeowner's insurance. As a consultant, you're likely be able to purchase that added endorsement that I talked about earlier. And you also want to take a look at your personal property insurance coverage limit. Make sure that you've contemplated the cost and expense associated with any of the electronics or assets that you're using inside the home that are related to the business.
I hire independent contractors. What type of insurance should I require them to carry before I employ them?
That's a great question. You will always
Hmm.
want to see that they have general liability coverage, and you will want them to provide proof of the workers' comp and the disability insurance if they have employees that are working on their behalf. You will want to also talk to them about, and you may need to do this by contract, so you may need to work with a legal counselor to pull together this contract for you. But you want to ask them to provide proof of the coverage and that you have an additional insured status, which means that if a claim was triggered by something that work that they performed and you were pulled into it, the policy will respond on your behalf as well as your independent contractor.
I provide independent contractors to execute liquor and wine tastings at liquor stores, bars, lounges, restaurants, and trade shows. How do I cover myself and independent contractors when dealing with liquor and the SLA?
Okay, another very complex question that we can address more detailed offline, but you definitely need to start with making sure you have liquor liability coverage and that you've worked with a carrier to truly understand the risk exposure you have. The things that they're going to look at is the frequency and the severity. So frequency, how often are you holding these tastings? And the severity would be how many people are participating in these tastings at one time? What's the most that you anticipate would be participating in this event?
And next, I own a massage business and I am moving to a new location that requires several insurance policies, including business interruption and insurance when contractors are doing work in the premises. I need to inquire this ASAP. I guess the question is this usual?
Yes. Often insurance, as I alluded to earlier today, is required by contract. So whether that's a lease agreement or a formal contract between two businesses, there will be an insurance section that stipulates the minimum requirements. Typically, in a lease contract, you'll see that they want to have $1 million in liability coverage, that they want to have fire legal coverage that protects them in the event that you are the cause of a fire in their building. They'll also want to have that additional insured status that says the policy will trigger and respond on their behalf as well. And then business interruption tells them that you will have a means to recuperate the regular revenue you would have generated to pay them to pay the rent in the event that your space is not habitable.
Next question, if I use my vehicle and home for business, what type of insurance is needed? And there's no specification regarding the type of business.
Okay. Again, it's going to be contingent on the type of business that you're running out of the home. Any home insurance carrier is going to want to know that there are business operations and that there are business exposures so they can adequately contemplate that exposure and rate for it. There are also going to be certain circumstances where they don't want to insure that exposure and they will exclude it. So it could be as easy as having an endorsement added to your policy, but more likely you're going to need that business owner's policy that will fold in some of these coverages, the general liability, the business personal property. So any equipment or assets you're using to run the business. And it'll also give you access to that business interruption as well as that hired and non-owned auto piece if you're conducting errands and using your personal vehicle on behalf of the business.
Okay. Do I have to be a member of HVCU to get help purchasing insurance?
Anyone from this webinar can reach out to me and have a conversation. I'm happy to give some perspective and guidance. In order to participate with insurance services, so to purchase your insurance through the credit union, you do have to be a member.
I have an E&O policy through Notary Business. Can that also be used in my real estate business?
Only if you have made your broker aware that you have two different risks. They would need to speak with the insurance provider and make sure that they understand those risks and they have rated for those risks and are willing to insure both under one.
I am currently in the process of launching a startup. Can you please provide some estimated insurance prices? Can insurances be bundled at a discount? And what are some notable recommended insurance brokers?
Okay, so I can't provide guidance or projections on the cost of insurance because I don't fully understand the startup that you're launching. You do need to speak to an insurance professional. You can bundle your coverages together, and certainly the more coverages you bring to one carrier, the more favorable they will be with their pricing. So it's not a discount. It's not as if you bring your home insurance, you get a discount on your auto insurance. Commercial insurance works very differently. But the more coverage that you purchase from one carrier, the more of an appetite they have for negotiating the rate. Some policies are fixed in price, meaning, for example, a business owner's policy or a BOP, the price is promulgated by the industry. So if it's a retail shop, the square footage is taken into consideration. So the size of your location, the anticipated revenue is also considered. Some of those expenses are fixed, meaning they won't go below a certain threshold for the premium. But again, the premium drivers are going to be the square footage, the revenue that you anticipate, the exposure that you have, and the work that you're doing. Did I answer everything in that question, Bill?
Yep.
Okay.
Are you a broker? What's the difference between an insurance broker and agent?
Great question. I am actually dual. I am a licensed insurance broker and a licensed property and casualty insurance agent. A property and casualty agent represents one specific carrier. So when I started my career, I represented Allstate Insurance many, many, many years ago. And then I moved over into the broker side of things. The insurance broker represents many carriers. So they have access to a multiple, variety of different insurance carriers and products to provide the most cost-effective and comprehensive policy to their member or their client.
Next question, do you provide insurance from one insurance company or from different companies to fit the insurer's needs?
So all policies should be customized to the business need. There are specific carriers that may have more of an appetite in one industry over another, or their pricing may be more favorable over another carrier. That is all taken in consideration when you have your comprehensive review with your licensed insurance professional.
I'm a sole proprietor. Can I use my homeowners or rental insurance umbrella with a business writer?
No, that's the easy answer. It's more complicated than that. And as a sole proprietor, you definitely have an exposure to that far extends what would be covered in a homeowner's insurance policy. Again, you would need to speak with an insurance broker about whether or not what you're doing in your business pursuits falls under that limited endorsement availability, which then could potentially extend under your personal umbrella, but more likely it will not.
Will commercial auto policies cover contractors using their personal autos or escorting clients in the course of business?
So it's
Mm.
very important that you have that hired and non-owned auto endorsement on your policy. That provides the coverage extension to using your personal vehicles for business use. And then all insurance policies provide bodily injury, liability, and medical payments for anyone in or around the vehicle that's injured.
Insurance type or coverage often required when selling to retail.
Insurance type or coverage when selling to retail.
Required when selling to retail, right?
Not sure I understand the question, but if,
Yeah.
again, if at minimum, if you're operating a business, liability insurance should be considered.
I am running an agricultural construction company. The LLC is registered in New York. I am the only one who is working for the company in New York. I am one of the co-founders. The upcoming project is in Maine. The sub who will be on the construction job and my partner who will be on the construction side are from Michigan and Washington State. Are we covered by the sub's general liability, or do I need to buy a New York-based insurance? A lot of moving parts to that one.
There's a lot of moving parts. So keep in mind that the subcontractor's policy primarily responds on behalf of the subcontractor, and that you could be secondary, but that does not cover your full exposure for needing general liability insurance. When you stated earlier, Bill, that this entity is registered in New York and this individual works in the New York location, I believe it alluded to the fact that there will be other partners or employees that work outside of New York. You still have to look
Correct.
at the whole risk and whether or not workers' compensation insurance is required and at what level and in which state. You can purchase policies in New York State to cover employees that are working in other states, which would be added by endorsement.
Does HVCU provide insurance policies, or do you obtain insurance from a larger company on behalf of the client?
That's a great question. Hudson Valley Credit Union provides access to insurance products. So we partner with a insurance broker that specializes in bringing insurance products and services to credit union members. So this broker then has access to, a wide industry of insurance carriers and provides the policy review, quote, and sales. So issues the policies direct to our members.
I have a business selling food items, consumables via e-commerce. Is general liability the only insurance needed or something more specialized?
General liability with the products and completed operations is very important. You should also consider taking a look at a BOP. There are some added features that you might find beneficial. So your actually baking or making the goods that you're selling on the e-commerce. So you have an exposure to food spoilage that could be picked up under the business owner's policy, cyber liability that could be added by endorsement, which we did not touch on today, but is another great topic in the world that we live in, which is very heavily driven online. You need to consider what exposures do you have online. Are you acquiring personal information from your clients? Are you processing credit cards or other forms of payments online? These are all things that work in the background for any good cyber threat, cyber criminal, and you want to make sure you have the appropriate coverage in place to protect you against those losses.
I'm a freelance consultant, but don't have a regular stream of work. Can I get E&O on a project by project basis and suspend it when I don't have any paying clients?
You know what, Bill? I'm going to say I don't believe that you can, nor would I think it would be cost effective, but I'd have to take that
Right.
offline and do some more research. If you're doing jobs less frequently, or maybe they're spaced out a little bit further throughout the year and they're not happening monthly, a typical carrier will look at the annual revenue as the exposure and determining how to rate the account. So if there was a small fluctuation throughout the year and maybe you had a stellar year and you made 25% more than you anticipated, they would true that up, if you will, at the end of the policy period when they audit you and say, hey, what did your income look like this year? But I think the better strategy, rather than starting and stopping and starting and stopping, because it would get costly, would be to take a look at, can you find a policy that fits the needs based on the current exposure, and then address any future growth by doing a review each year with your broker?
I'm a bookkeeper and tax preparer. I mostly work from home and a shared office and a co-working space. I purchased a professional insurance online and not sure if I'm well covered or if I need additional policies.
Okay. Yes. Great question again. Speaking with an insurance broker is your best avenue. You likely could purchase a business owner's policy and fold that professional liability into that program, which would give you a more expansive set of coverages, which would also provide you protection while you're working in that shared space if someone were to become sick or injured as a result of something you did.
My husband continues to work from home since the shutdown. He's an employee of a company. Is there an insurance issue for us?
So remote
Does
work has become the new norm. He's not running a business himself. He's working on behalf of his organization. Things to check in on is make sure that there's workers' compensation coverage in place. There's disability insurance coverage in place. I'm confident there is. And because he's not pursuing business on his own behalf, you should have adequate coverage under your homeowner's insurance, so long as you have done a complete comprehensive review of that coverage in the last 12 months.
How does one become a member to acquire your insurance services?
So are we in a gray area, Bill, or can I answer this question?
You can answer this question.
Okay, so obtaining membership at Hudson Valley Credit Union is very easy. You can call into our contact center or walk into any branch. We require just 1 cent in a savings account for you to become a shareholder inside the credit union, and a share account is required to establish membership.
I noticed that terrorism insurance is included in my workers' comp disability insurance. Is this required by New York State?
That's a great question, and I don't know the answer. So I will have to ask that individual to circle back with me and shoot me an email. I'll be happy to do some research and answer that for you.
Okay. I rent and live in a New York City apartment. I own a leadership development business and I use my home address as the business address. I run online training and online coaching services, webinars from my apartment. Occasionally, I go out on site to client offices. Which insurance policies do you recommend I carry?
So I would definitely recommend you get the general liability. That provides you protection when you're actually going on premises to other locations for any damages or injuries that you could be alleged to have caused. And then professional liability, you're rendering a professional service, education. So it's important that you consider purchasing that coverage as well.
Okay. What type of insurance is needed for somebody starting a bakery business?
Great question. There is a whole slew of coverages that you need, and a business owner's policy or a BOP may fit all of those. But typically, you need general liability. You want to have that commercial property coverage to provide protection for the actual premises that you own or rent, as well as any of the content, any of the supplies that you'll have on hand, and the goods that you're producing. You'll also want to make sure that if you have employees, the workers' comp and the disability, the umbrella coverage that we talked about earlier, and certainly that hired and non-owned auto coverage.
I will be the only employee in the LLC. I may drive to meet customers. What insurance policy will I need?
Okay, very similar to our answer before. It's that hired and non-owned coverage. So anytime you're using a personal vehicle or an employee is using their personal vehicle in pursuit of business activities, it's important to have that coverage.
When would a small business also require a separate cyber insurance policy in addition to general and professional liability?
Anytime they're conducting business online, they should be looking at cyber liability. So if they have a website, particularly if they're advertising products and services, obtaining personal information, contacting clients, or accepting payments.
Is it correct that the insurances in New York are more expensive than in other states, or is this to be reviewed case by case?
It needs to be reviewed case by case.
Who is doing the insurance audits? Who does them?
The insurance carriers. So they have each carrier has an entire division that's dedicated to insurance audits.
I keep hearing homeowners insurance. What if you're renting?
There, you may still have the opportunity to add that incidental business exposure endorsement to your renter's insurance policy. You'll need to contact your insurance broker. It is carrier specific.
Is there a short list of insurance companies that funnel their products through HBCU?
No, that's the easy answer because our insurance broker represents so many. You can go to our website, hbcu.org, and click on the insurance page. There is a section for personal, so consumer insurance, as well as business insurance that gives you a broader overview.
If a client wants to sue regarding something that occurred prior to insurance being instituted, what would that be covered?
If there was no insurance in place at the time. So it really depends on the type of loss. And this is where it can get really complicated and I can't give too much guidance, but it depends on the type of loss and the type of policy. If you have a claims made policy, that means that the policy would have been had to be enforced at the time the claim was made, and you'd have to have a look back period for when the claim was alleged. So say the claim was filed today, but they alleged that the incident or the loss occurred 3 years ago. It really, you have to look at claims made and occurrence, and you really need to speak with a claims professional. And each of the carriers, insurance carriers, have an entire claims department that you can field those questions to.
As a food vendor doing outdoor events, what type of insurance is needed?
So when I think of food vendor, I think of food truck or those pop-up shops at farmers markets or fairs. You definitely need the liability insurance that provides that protection for you while you're on the premises and in the course of your business. You'll also want to look at whether or not you need to cover any specific equipment, supplies, or goods that are for sale, which would be covered under your commercial property policy.
And want to pass on this great session. Tina is so knowledgeable. So congratulations. Compliment. A number of other questions have come up here regarding, yes, you will get a copy of the recording and this presentation. Yes, Tina's contact information is included as part of the slides. It's actually up right now on the screen. And you will also get a copy of the Hudson Valley Credit Union ebook on insurance. So that and takes care of all the other questions. And let me just give this one quick scan. One last one.
Nope.
What would be the best insurance for someone selling used items online or at a flea market?
Again, it's really going to be contingent on what types of products they're selling, but first and foremost, they need that general liability coverage.
Okay. So I think that pretty much covers all the questions. I, just commented on all the other general questions. I think I responded to them. And thank you all for joining, and thank you, Tina, for again sharing your knowledge and answering quite an extensive list of questions. We had plenty of time to handle them, and thank you very much for doing so and so thoroughly. So again, for everybody's information, next month our webinar will be addressing hiring considerations, and that will be held on Wednesday, April 17th at 1 p.m. Next slide. And I want to thank you all for joining. And again, thank you to Tina for sharing her knowledge. And again, just a reminder, WAR is funded in part to a cooperation with the U.S. Small Business Administration. Again, thank you all for joining. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.